And I love this bit when it goes recording.
Oh, no.
That's the exciting bit, you know. And excuse me, because I turn into someone different as well sometimes when I do this.
I do.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, James, and how are you today?
Very well, Paul. Thank you. Very well.
Great.
Sun's shining.
I can see the sun is shining. It's not quite shining here. We've got a lot of wind hitting the Essex area at the moment. Have you got this wind that's currently on its way?
No. So I'm down in the southwest of the UK, in the lovely green county of Devon. And would you believe it? The sun always shines down here. So we're very fortunate.
I can believe that. You've got an amazing climate down there.
Great. Yeah, amazing. Amazing place to live, to be honest. You know, I live here with Ali, my wife. We've got two quite boisterous sort of young boys, Jack and Barney, and we're in easy striking distance of Dartmoor, you know, various beaches and the like. So
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that finishes that conversation from my jealousy. Have you lived in the area long, James?
Well, we've been in this place for about 10 years. We came down about 12 years ago when I left Heathrow, set up my own business. Where we lived seemingly was sort of not really that important because I was going to, you know, use the train and effectively set up a consultancy business. But we had various connections down here, and in a previous role, I was involved in sustainable tourism. So a lot of our suppliers were based in Totnes, which is our local town. So in South Devon in the South Hams. And then, two small boys happened to us. So we thought, wow, what a great place to bring them up. You know, ironically, they're very homely. So they love just being at home. So our challenge is to, you know, try and get them outside, you know, get involved and, you know, got various sort of quite mad projects going on in here, but we're very lucky. We've got we're in the countryside, so we've got lots of space.
So any consolations? I had two young boys and now two big boys, and they forget about their home. And when they get late teens, they even forget about their parents to a certain extent because they're out. They get their wings. These wings suddenly come from Amazon, and they put these wings on and they go. And then you get the occasional. But if you don't hear nothing, you know they're all right. That's what I've always said, you know. But yeah, so the good news is, James, you've got some good times coming, but some great times now, if that makes sense. So, James, I've been doing your training with the team on EnCO, and obviously I've seen some of your presentations, which I'd like to touch on later on in this podcast.
Okay.
For the benefit of our audience today, could you give us some background and tell us your origin story?
Okay, so I'm a chartered engineer. I'm a chartered engine manager. Been in the industry, crikey, way on, you know, 25 or so years. Majority of that I've specialised in energy and sustainability management. And yeah, my early part of the career, to be honest, I was very fortunate. I had quite a broad set of experiences in the industry. Probably kicking off with sort of building services, working, you know, in the sort of FM operational, you know, support world, design and construction. I've dabbled and worked in renewable energy systems, sustainable tourism, I just mentioned, and the like. So I think that was very crucial to who I am now. But it probably wasn't, well, like most of us in the industry in that period, I was very much trained to focus in on technology and big projects when it came to saving energy. And it probably wasn't until I was the energy manager of Heathrow Airport, so a good 10 years ago or so now, that I actually began to appreciate that it's all about people. It's about behavior change. And quite often the secret is to be able to blend your technical and people-based solutions with really simplistic targeted management controls alongside. So that's why I set up my business. My current business is called the Discovery Mill, and it's why we do what we do. So we specialize in what we call energy and sustainability management through people. We work with quite a large cross-section of different types of clients. But, you know, with behaviour change in mind, whatever the sector, we find the same principles sort of very much apply. So I spent quite a lot of my life, certainly after the last 10 years or so with the Discovery Mill, supporting organisations. Quite often it starts with strategy around energy and sustainability management, but I love sort of rolling up my sleeves, getting very hands-on as well. And, you know, for me, that's sort of quite critical. So whether that's training, whether it's sort of facilitating pop-up events or whatever, you know, obviously depending on the type of organisation and the like. But you know, yeah, you know, for you know, the issue we've got in the industry really is as part of the reason why I do what I do is that very, you know, relatively very few organisations are really embracing, you know, sort of behaviour change, and you know, we know it's you know, half of the opportunity out there, but most organisations spend the majority of their time focusing on technology. So quite frankly, you know, they're sort of missing out on the, you know, on the opportunity, which, you know, find quite frustrating. So, you know, part of what I do, and it has been, to be honest, you know, for the whole period I've been working with Discovery Mill, is collaborating on an industry level. So working with the likes of Jez and John, yourself, and really, you know, trying to, you know, promote the opportunities, and, you know, galvanize the industry to a greater extent than ever before, because it's, you know, it's urgent that we need to do this.
Exactly.
So one of the initiatives that I've been involved in, and I've been involved in a number, and I'm still involved in a number, is EnCO. So EnCO, as on your background, stands for the Energy Conscious Organisation. It's led up by ESTA, so the Energy Services Technology Association, and supported by the Energy Institute here in the UK. So this is why I guess I'm here, you know, today.
Of course you're here because of that. We need to promote. And you know, you hit a nail on the head. It's 50% of what we can do. And it not only is it 50%, there's, for me, I don't think there's any cost. There's cost to the business regarding management side of it, but there's no cost to actually implement this. This is the low-hanging fruit approach to energy management, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, exactly. Some organisations get it, you know. Yeah. So as you alluded to, you know, I've worked with, you know, Heathrow, been very privileged to work with Heathrow for over 12, you know, 13 years in all parts, you know. So heart of the operation, you know, the development. You know, I was very privileged to be part of the Terminal 2 development. Do a lot of work with retailers, business partners, you know, across the airport and the like. And so organisations like Heathrow, they get that people solutions need to be part of what we do. And, you know, typically us energy specialists, you know, we're employed to help these guys with their headache of delivering, you know, energy decarbonisation targets and the like. But the organisations need to get that people solutions need to be at the heart of that, you know, at the heart of that solution.
Let's take, I'd like to touch on two areas of you know, it, as you mentioned before, it's all organisations this can benefit, but let's go from one end to the other end. So let's talk about Heathrow, a massive organisation, significant amounts of property, spread across loads of different areas with different terminals, different stakeholders, different people coming in. You've got concessions, you have to, where do you start? Is there a magic wand to say you need to start here?
Yeah, you're right. You know, Heathrow's great because it's got all types of, you know, property, buildings, infrastructure, processes, you know, industrial processes and the like, you know. So, you know, for me, the starting point is, as I was just alluding to be honest, is that recognition that people solutions are, you know, need to be a heart of, you know, of the strategy. And there are a number of reasons for that. So, you know, people solutions are quite often one of the quickest, most cost-effective ways of delivering carbon savings at scale. You know, other organisations or but organizations like Heathrow get the fact that if you invest in behavior change, you effectively right-size your subsequent investments in technology and energy systems. And also, very importantly, you assure the legacy benefits of the investments that you've made. But the starting point within that, which I think maybe is getting to, is that they recognize that the problem or opportunity, as they see it, is the fact that our organizations are hugely wasteful in the way that we use energy. Yeah. You know, some people call it avoidable waste or whatever, but you just have to, you know, open up your eyes, walk around even the most efficient organizations. And you see it at places like Heathrow still very much, you know, the examples of waste. So lighting's very obvious, you know, it's in your face, but a lot of it is, you know, is very hidden. And there's lots of evidence out there to demonstrate that that's, you know, inevitable in all our organizations at the moment. So the starting point has to be avoidable waste. That's what it's about. Yeah.
Whether it's visible or non-visible. And
from
an assessment point of view, I always, because I do some coaching and with other assessors, and I say to them that open every door, scratch everything, look for the hidden opportunities, because there will be. You know, I was in a hotel in Dundee, and there was this plant room, and it sort of alluded that there was some form of electronic equipment behind it. The guy said, "We've never opened that door." And all it was a padlock. He went and got a hacksaw. We hacksawed the padlock off. Behind there was a brand new CHP that never ever been turned on. Yeah. It's that sort of thing that we're trying to engage with the organization and the energy assessors doing this work.
Yeah, I've had numerous similar experiences. You know, the classic for me is lighting control head ends. Right. You open up a door and you discover a head end for a lighting control system that is filled with alarms that no one knew was there. You know. Yeah. But I think you know, a key point for me, and this is why you know the approach that I advocate, is getting the right person to open the door. And historically, it's been, you know, us energy specialists that open the door and go, "Oh, there's a bit of kit there. Oh, that's great. We'll make sure it's as efficient as possible." Yeah. But for me, you need to involve everyone across the organization, particularly those who are closest to the service associated with that, you know, that area of whatever it is you're looking at, because they'll know whether the thing behind the door is needed or not. So they're closest to the customer, and to, you know, they're the guys who can really help, you know, open your eyes, you know, sort of with avoidable waste. So it needs to be operational. You need to have an operational focus on it, really.
And then take it back to the finance director or the person paying all the bills and say, look, cost savings payback. This is what we need to then apply to it.
Yeah. You know, and there's a whole host of evidence we can draw on, you know, to help do that, because quite often as an energy specialist, you know, the director wants to see third-party verification. And this is a, you know, key element of EnCO, really. But, you know, you're probably familiar with the Better Buildings Partnership, for example. So they've been looking at UK offices, and their research has found that on average, if I remember this rightly, the average UK office consumes 2 to 3 times more energy than the equivalent offices in Melbourne, Australia. Exactly the same sort of climate. And the best offices in Melbourne are 5 to 6 times more efficient, you know. And, you know, so Amory Lovins, I don't know if you're familiar with Amory Lovins from the Rocky Mountain Institute in the US. You know, he wrote a book which partly inspired me back in the 1990s called Factor 4. It's full of examples of, you know, in our society, things that consume at least 4 times more energy than they need to be. And, you know, we had the technology back in the 1990s. We've still got the technology. The challenge here is not technology, it's behavioral. And part of that behavioral is thinking about convincing the director who's going to sign off, you know, what you're going to do, as well as the guys on the ground who are actually going to make, you know, sort of champion the change. So yeah.
One of the things that I was impressed with your presentation you did for the EnCO Academy recently was the conversation around bringing the teams together and empowering people, which I really like. And I think that for me is another key factor to what we're trying to key up here, is the empowering the individual. Yeah. How would you go about doing that? I know my ways of doing that. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think it needs to start, and this is sort of, with EnCO, we're targeting the energy specialist first because they are the gurus in this process. Okay. So for me, the starting point, empowering people, is to work with, the energy specialists or the energy managers and organizations. And for us, because a lot of us are engineers, to realize that we need help with stuff. And it's very natural for us to avoid behaviors and people out there. And to be honest, it's sort of like a human trait, really, I saw on your LinkedIn profile, actually, Paul, that you follow, what's his name? Tony Robbins, the US life coach. So if I remember rightly, Tony Robbins would say that to avoid pain, people need certainty. And, the problem is that, in the industry, there's a lack of awareness around the certainty of this sort of, people type solutions. So, I think, first of all, is to empower the people within organizations is to actually work with and target the energy specialists, particularly around their facilitation skills and the like. So that's sort of why that's been a key part of the strategy of EnCO. So through the training programs you mentioned, and also, by all of us swapping and sharing experiences, to how make that work. And the guys effectively need to get out to do it. They need to get out and talk to and listen to the guys, on the ground, and understand what's going to, what's going to improve their capability, opportunity, and motivation of, to try and get the guys more involved, because it will be different for every organization. So you've got to think of that before you think of the more tactical approaches that you use to empower people. And so ultimately, the guys need to sort of get out there, speak to the guys on the ground, and plan that behavioural change strategy. And the vehicle that we've helped to enable them to do that is called the EnCO Matrix. So that's sort of how the EnCO Matrix fits in. Does that? And then you need to apply your empowerment, facilitation, engagement techniques to each of the pillars of the matrix. So I'll give you some examples on that, but
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. So basically, because you need to sit down with the organisations so they understand. And I normally, with that matrix, I would try to get the organisation to answer where they think they are, and then you say where they are as well. So you work with them around the print. There, for me, it's taking it back to the principles of what we're trying to achieve here, and then benchmarking it to take it forward. And then touching on the points you were saying there as well, but from the expert, we are engineers. If you say to an engineer, I want you to become a salesperson, whoa, hold on a minute. I'm an engineer. I do black and white things. I don't do the gray and the color stuff. So we need to encourage experts to become salespeople. That's why I sometimes interview experts in sales on my podcast. Because I've done the background, I've done sales courses. I've come through a corporate career through the likes of Trend, who are now Honeywell. And to get on in a career like that, you have to do sales. Salespeople are successful in those sorts of businesses. So I've had to learn sales. And by learning the sales, the Dale Carnegies of this world, I've had to go through all that process. And I'm finding that all those tools I picked up in them days to help me do selling is really fundamental with what I'm doing today. So when I walk around the building, I engage with everyone, the cleaner, the security staff, the receptionist, everyone is, and just showing them my badge, energy manager. I'm here to, first day they see me, okay, there's this guy walking around as the energy manager. Then it's, there's Paul, the energy manager. Then, here comes the energy manager. He's going to tell us to turn the lights off. But already you're putting that sort of message across. And I think something like that would just reduce the energy by 1%. That's just empowering those people to start thinking about that, in my own personal opinion. And then the expert starts to kick in, because you then start to step it. I've had so many people come to me. I've done an exhibition recently at EMEX. and had this woman come on the stand. She was the procurement manager. She said, my boss has told me we've got to be net zero by this date. I don't know how to do it. He says, I've got to go and put a load of solar on the roof. Right. Okay. Let's take a step back. Energy management is a journey. We need to map the journey out. And this is how I would approach it.
Yeah.
No, it's just taking people back. Don't jump straight in.
Yeah. I think one of the issues we've got, and interestingly, making me think, is that what you've just described for me is what we all should be doing. Okay. So, if you take the UK, so quite often that journey for an organization might start with an energy audit, and we've sort of encouraged that. Yeah. So we have in the UK, it's mandatory, as you all know, but for listeners out there potentially, it's mandatory for large organizations to conduct an energy audit every 4 years. Now, energy specialists are absolutely key in that process. Yeah. It's called ESOS, and they're called ESOS lead assessors. But what's shocking from the ESOS reports is very few of them mention the sorts of things you just talked about.
Exactly.
Very few. There's hardly anything on behavior change or engagement. And it's very easy, I think, for us engineers, because a lot of us are engineers, to go out and identify the tech stuff that gets in there.
Yeah.
But we've sort of, as I was saying earlier, the sort of behaviour is a bit uncertain, so we just don't go there. Ironically, actually, Tony Robbins talks about, to be happy as an individual, you need to have uncertainty in your life. And that comes down, there's challenges around people's sort of behaviours and involving people, but that's what makes it so interesting. Maybe we'll come to that more in a minute.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make here is that, oh God, I've lost my line of thought, but the point I'm trying to make here is that, there's lots of opportunity out there, for the guys to go at, if they use the approach you've just described, and that's to go out, speak to the people on the ground and reduce that uncertainty, speak to the guys who are, quite frankly, the specialists in what they do, and that quite often is operations. Yeah. And an EnCO, for EnCO, we quite modestly, in my opinion, but typically this is what I'll do with my clients as well, we target at least 10% from behavior change, so additional savings from behavior change, which gives you something to go at. So it's a bit more than the 1 or 2%, and that's sort of part of the problem we've got, because it's people have in mind it's 1 or 2%. Yeah. They then think, oh, I'm not going to prioritize that. Yeah. But it's actually much bigger than that. And the likes of John and Jez and yourself, I know, we've had our eyes open to this. And you alluded to a conversation that I once had with Jez. He related a story, and I said, well, yeah, exactly. That was my eye opener. Yeah. And quite often, I talk about Heathrow because it was my eye opener. Jez talks about Rolls-Royce because it was his eye opener, etc. So that's part of the challenge, is working with these guys and overcoming that certainty issue. We feel, as part of the sort of the EnCO sort of team, that we need to create 50 to 100 case studies of people doing exactly what you just described to make this work, and they need to be, need to be measured and verified in terms of the savings they produce. Exactly. We've currently got 14, right, in this. So we feel, as one of our sort of mission, if you like, was to create a decent bank of case studies, so people are much more aware of what you've just described, just talked about, and so we can get it into the business cases or the energy audits, which then flow into the energy strategies and plans of the organizations. So that's why our sort of mission is energy specialist focused for EnCO. And crikey, the opportunity is enormous.
Exactly. So James, we talk about Heathrow's the big boulder and rock that you've managed to get going, and when it gets going, it runs along nicely. Obviously we need to then go back on a regular basis to keep the boulder going, because we know what boulders do. When they stop, they just stop. So that's the big organizations. We could use this methodology across all organizations. How do we approach the smaller and the SMEs of this world, which really need our support currently?
Yeah, well, and for me, I totally agree. And this is one of the reasons why, in my mind, we designed the EnCO matrix to be what it looks like. And as you just described, it's visual. It's actually based, I don't know if you're familiar, on something called the energy management matrix. I think first came about certainly in the UK back in the 1990s.
I've still got that. I've still got that book.
and lots of people still use it actually as part of their energy audits, but they're not
I use it.
In the way
I use it.
Yeah, but it's not used in the way that in my mind it should be. But it was part of the making a corporate commitment campaign originally. So it was designed to be a behavioural tool. So the fact that it's very visual means that you can sit down quite easily with a non-specialist, an MD of a small organisation, and use it as a way of facilitating a conversation about where do you think you are now? Where do you think you're going to be in a few years' time? I'm doing the work with a supermarket at the moment, sitting down with the store manager. Great way to have the conversation. Then you can dive in on the particular pillars of the matrix, which allow them to make change. And quite often with small organizations, they might be very good at some things. Quite often empowerment, for example, you mentioned, is not actually a major issue for a small organization, but quite often is for a large organization. So it allows you to take that holistic approach, and dive in. Engagement has to be, the lead, and that's the first thing on the pillar. And, you need to get to a point where everyone in the organization's engaged. So, that, leader, top manager within that organization, and what we might call the significant energy users, the guys who are responsible for the consumption of the organization, but ultimately it needs to be everyone, particularly for a small organization, and so communications, I think, absolutely fundamental for all of the, whatever type. And, my colleague, John, will say that, even small organizations, we've been talking about this for years and years in the UK, everyone, has seen this before, and our problem is that quite often, particularly the sort of, the government-led campaigns maybe, but, I won't go there, generally the campaigns are quite dull, quite uninspiring, so everyone's got, a sort of inbuilt veto of their inaction, and that's effectively what they do. And SMEs more so, they don't, they see it not being core business, so we need to talk the language of sustainable development, optimizing, getting the best out of the assets a small business has got, optimizing across all your objectives, including, costs, which is a key one. Small businesses particularly focus on customer service. So it's sort of moving away from that single focus to costs, environmental impact. Reputation is getting more important around this as well. So I see engagement as being a fundamental, particularly in small organizations.
You mentioned a word there, dare I say it, beginning with G, the government. And we've,
do we want to go there?
Yeah. I think we're going to be arrested soon, but ESOS, absolutely. I'm an ESOS lead assessor. I really love the process. It's very stressful at the end of it because we're cramming everything in to get that to that deadline. But then you get to the deadline and you don't have to do nothing about it. That frustrates me so much. And legislation, good, but I've written an article about this. Legislation hasn't got no teeth. We need teeth. We need some grit into this to make things happen. I know we're trying to get that through this next sort of phase as such, but it does need some grit behind it. And in addition to that, we've got legislation for the major energy user groups, but not for the SMEs. We need to see that across the board. The SMEs probably a bigger part of the energy that we're on the demand than it is, in total, really. We need to focus on all these areas.
Yeah, particular, you need a carrot and a stick, ultimately, but for small organizations, I'm more in favor of the carrot, to be honest.
Yes.
Incentivization. Going back to the what is this about? We're trying to get people to be alert to, avoidable waste within their organizations. And it's huge, we've covered that. Every single person, from my mind, within an organization has to champion energy and sustainability as part of what they do every day. But it needs to be positive, not negative for me, So, if it's negative, if there's teeth with this, the problem you get is that people begrudgingly do it. So actions become frosty actions. Sustainability is quite overwhelming, particularly for all small organizations. Yeah. So my concern is that, you know, people in small organizations will just reject what needs to be done, you know. So we need to make it positive. So incentivization, okay. I think lots of people can, you know, as an industry, we spend far too much of our time counting carbon. We should be doing more action, particularly for smaller organizations. So it needs to be carefully thought about. And ultimately, I have 5 principles that I work to. And this is the basis, you know, because I will cut up large organizations into small, you know, areas. That's how I work. Got to make it local, you know, it's key. Small organization, that you tick that box already. You've got to make it focused, you know, you've got to make it desirable. So that's the positive bit. As we know, it needs to be continual, you know, but most importantly, it's got to be owned by the people, you know, involved in it, you know, and, you know, so I'm in favor of incentivization, but it's got to be, you know, it's got to be intrinsic as well as extrinsic. It's got to come from, you've got to work with people's hearts and minds. They've got to get it. Yeah. Otherwise, you know, the problem is the incentivization falls away. You lose the good stuff. You can over rely on incentivization. Yeah. So I think it does need to be carefully thought about.
You think the government could be doing more? That's where I'm going with the teeth side of it. Do you think they could be doing more for this?
So one of the when we sat down and laid out the mission for EnCO, we laid out a number of things, okay, and we've made some great strides on this, you know. So you know, we want to engage energy professionals, specialists. That was a sort of key part of it. We wanted to do some campaigns, you know, we produced a video, we wanted to, you know, so I think we've got 160 odd guys have been through that training course that you mentioned, which is, you know, which is great. We've got loads of resources on the website, you know, CPD learning modules and the like. But the thing we've not quite got to, there's an element around promoting organisations, when we come to that in a minute, is that we wanted to work with government, and we have been working with government actually consistently over the last 3 years, having very, you know, constructive conversations in some ways with BEIS, the Cabinet Office, you know, trying to encourage them to lead by example through, you know, doing something within the government estate. But one of the ideas that was on the table was, you know, particularly as feed-in tariffs were falling away in the UK, was to take that mechanism and make it almost into a non-consumption tariff, you know, provide a kickback for non-consumption. And we have the M&V skills now, you know, processes to do that. So, you know, I think there may be something in that. You know, clearly we need to work with government in the way that makes sense to them. Energy is currently in the Department of Business, so it's quite often all about technology and patents and competitiveness and stuff. You know, so yes, government can be doing more.
Brilliant. So before we get ourselves into too much trouble, James, we've come to that stage of the podcast where I'm seeking for you to see if there's something you can give back to our industry as a takeaway.
Yeah. So you mentioned that at the beginning. I sort of jotted down a couple of thoughts. You know, so the first one for me is, you know, the power of what a lot of people call the energy and sustainability champion. You know, I see them as a key connector, someone to connect up all those everyday champions that I was talking about. You know, everyone who needs to think about energy and sustainability as part of what they do every day, they need to be coordinated, and to get over the engagement and the, you know, raise the alertness and the, you know, develop skills and the like, you need to have some people in place who are the change makers. And for me, they are the heroes of this process. You know, so for me, I work, you know, a lot with them, you know, when I get down, and I think that's a key thing that that we can all do more as an industry. So, you know, for me, the successes that I've had at Heathrow and other case studies like Vanderlander on the EnCO website have been down to those, you know, energy sustainability champions. But I'm a real believer in, you know, we can learn from each other, you know, and this is what this is about, your podcast,
exactly.
Which is, you know, which is great. And you know, EnCO is about that, you know, across really fundamentally. So the EnCO Academy, the idea of that is to get professionals to swap and share experiences. You know, another initiative that, you know, we launched last year that is complementary for me, you know, to EnCO is, and it's based around collaborative branding when we work with others. So the Big Green Academy, but that's aimed at those sort of energy sustainability everyday champions, and trying to encourage a sort of similar sort of dynamic, obviously in a different way, because they're not professionals, they're not specialists, you know, to try and, you know, support each other and get the message out there. You know, so for me, those two things are fundamental to the way that I try and approach what I do, that, yeah, I feel can help all of us.
Excellent.
I've left you speechless.
Yeah, it does keep looking up the screen now, but don't worry too much. The audio is coming through. So, yeah. James, where are we going now? What's the future for EnCO? I know we've done the training. We're now all meeting regularly on the academy, which I really enjoy. We'll get together, and that group's growing and growing and growing. Where are we going now with EnCO now? Yeah, so you know, and it's been great, you know, in terms of, you know, 2021 particularly has been a big step forward. 2022 for me is a big shout out to organisations to get on board with this. And as you know, we've got a sort of a registration of EnCO organisations. We've got the first couple now who are on board, Rolls-Royce and Trinity School. But we need a big shout out to raise that awareness of people approaches. And by becoming a registered EnCO organisation, organisations can demonstrate, and it's externally, you know, verified, that their energy management processes have that very important people sort of component to it. You know, and ultimately, you know, for us, EnCO organisations are, you know, they're more sustainable, they're more cost effective in the way that they go about energy and decarbonisation, but also it's about collaboration. They're collaborative with it. And to get that, I feel big part of the next challenge, which is sort of what this is about, and while we're very appreciative of your help, is we need to get the word out there much more so. So we need to start the campaigning bit much more. And, you know, the bit that's unfamiliar to us, you know, is how to do it on social media, LinkedIn, you know, push all those buttons. So for me, that's the big next step. And so much to do, you know, which is why we're hugely appreciative of you supporting it, Paul, to be honest. And then the starting point, James, what's the website that we can promote today and now?
Yeah, so the energyconsciousorganisation.org.uk. So that's online. It's got a wealth of resources on there, 14 case studies at the moment, learning CPD modules, I mentioned other resources and the like. It is going through a little bit of iteration. There's a video on there that we've created that you know, I think we can make more use of. And that's designed for any energy specialist to use and promote them, you know, promote it through their own, you know, channels, ideally. So we're a sort of a core team of guys, and it's been great collaboration, to be honest. You know, some really good guys. You know, Esther, as you might, I think you're a member of Esther now, aren't you, Paul?
Yes, I am a member. Yeah.
You know,
and they support us. They're our partners regarding our certification work.
Yes,
I work very closely with Mervyn.
Yeah, and the training that I do as well. You know, Mervyn's very keen on the training side of things, which I totally agree with. But there's some great guys across Esther, very experienced guys who really know their stuff. So we can draw on that, but we need to. I think we need more people involved in this, you know, more actively, because we've got a sort of a core steering group, which has been important to get the strategy right. But I think we're very much in the rollout phase now. You know, it needs. We're very keen for it to be bigger and better, basically. You know, and will happen quicker.
And the right things will happen. And the answer from all of this will be the right things will be. We'll all be able to make a difference from the outcomes of all of this. I think. I know. I should change that word to I don't think I know. It will make a big difference.
Well, we've had our eyes opened to it, so we know. So we have that Tony Robbins certainty factor. Yeah, that's the difference. For me, it comes down, and it's of natural human. Ironically, it's natural human, you know, behavioural trait. That's the issue. You know, so we need to deal with that behavioural trait to make this happen. For me.
Brilliant. James, what a great way to finish on that quote from Tony Robbins. And I'd like to say thank you very much firstly for making me very jealous in the start, for saying where you are and the part of the world you are, and then secondly for the inspiration I'm sure you're going to give to many people that are going to listen to this. So James, thank you very much for coming along today and the interview.
Well, thank you very much for all your help, Paul. Much appreciated.
And lastly, you and your family, please be safe in these times.
Yeah, thank you, and to you. Yeah, and to yours.
Brilliant.